Hi there. Good afternoon. This is Pastor Jeff Jones, and it's Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I got a really neat gift for Father's Day. Just got back from lunch, and one of the grandkids, maybe both of them that I had lunch with, they got me a Polaris slingshot, and it's a Hot Wheels. So if you look real close, there it is. And I think they're hoping to play with it possibly. So anyway, First Chronicles chapter 28. And I've got a lot to say in just a short period of time here. So we'll get right at it today. And this is the message I preached at our service this morning. And I wanted to give it to you today. First Chronicles chapter 28, verse number 9, it says, "And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth all hearts and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found of thee, but if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever." I want you to notice that phrase there in the first or second sentence. It says, first or second phrase, it says, "Know thou the God of thy father." And I hope you have a godly heritage. Maybe you're the first in your line. You're a first generation Christian. Maybe you didn't have the best example, or maybe you did. Wherever you're at with that, I hope either you're looking back at the God that your father served, or you're setting a precedent and you're going to tell your kids to serve your God. And so I think the Lord's got a lot for us here. I've got 4 words that I want to share with you about what a father's role is all about. And I was watching and I don't use movie references very often at all, but I've been going back and watching what some people would consider classic movies from the 30s and 40s. They're just kind of outside of the realm of where they were silent. And so the quality of the picture is sometimes poor, sometimes not so poor. It's pretty good quality considering. Some of them are funny. The humor is sometimes very fast-paced, very different. Typically would be something that would be very clean, but it's just it's really what I've enjoyed it lately. Some things I've never seen before. I watched a movie the other night, a movie called My Man Godfrey. It's about a guy. He's grew up Boston elite, Boston Brahmins. He was a somebody, very rich, and he turned his back on that. William Powell was the character, and I don't know if he had his heart broken, but he finds himself, he's living in an ash heap, kind of a junkyard, a trash pile there in the river there in New York City. One night he's there, and some socialites were having a party there in New York City, and they're playing a game, a scavenger hunt, and the whole idea was to find these certain items. But one of the items was not an item per se, it was a person. And whoever brought back the first one of these as a big prize probably was going to win the night. And the item that they were supposed to bring back was a forgotten man. A forgotten man. Now that phrase has been used different ways, and I actually looked up and saw the different ways it's been used. But in that movie, it was a man that had been forgotten by society, down on his luck. No one missing him, no one thinking of him. And it seemed very callous to use that forgotten man, as a prop for a game. And so that it's kind of a comedy played off that. There are a lot of forgotten people in society. Sometimes we see children that are forgotten. We see it third world countries, but we see it also in our country. Children are forgotten. Sometimes adoption is tough. Sometimes kids get stuck in the foster program, and they grow up and they really have no parents per se. Also, you see people that are forgotten in the sense that you go to a nursing home and people are forgotten there sometimes. No visitors, no one to care for them. And so I think maybe we're more accustomed to seeing forgotten people, people with disabilities, people that are on the periphery of society. And but the forgotten person I want to maybe speak about today, obviously tied in with Father's Day, is fathers. Fathers are mocked. They're the butt of a lot of jokes. If there's a sitcom, Dad's the stupidest guy in the house. He's not very clued in. Everything's above his head. He can't make decisions. He's a likable guy, but he's a moron. And the kids know more than him. Mom does. Everybody does it. The world's laughing at Dad. That's not the take that the Bible has about Dad, about fathers. And so I am one, by the way, father, grandfather. And so obviously we want to uplift fatherhood, in the same sense that we lift up motherhood. We lift up the home. We lift up marriage. We lift up, two-parent households. And I know some people are not afforded that opportunity due to sometimes things outside of their control, or maybe poor choices in life. And they're making the best with where they're at. My hat's off to you. And we want to help everybody that we can, no matter what your situation. Start where you're at and move up, So fatherhood is something that is maligned, but not from our pulpit. We're not going to malign fathers. We're going to help them, and we're to come alongside, not take their place, but help them. And so statistics tell us that much of the trouble with our society, particularly we think of inner city types of things, some inner cities are absolute war zones. It's hard not to hear every weekend the report from places like Chicago, mass shootings and deaths, and they say that the vast majority of homes that troubled teenagers and troubled people are coming out of are homes that do not have a dad. They have a mom that maybe is working as hard as they can, but I think there's something to be said about having both parents, obviously. And so statistics show us that it is a handicap to our society. But I want to not only speak to people that are going through that, but people that are doing a good job. I want to applaud you today. I want to say keep going and do your best with where you find yourself. These 4 words, I hope, hopefully they are an encouragement to you. And I'm not fussing. I told somebody here a couple of days ago, it seems like on Mother's Day, I'm applauding, and moms on Father's Day, it seems like typically I find myself fussing at them, and I sure don't mean to do that. Encouraging guys to step up, and honestly, a lot of guys just haven't had a great example, and they're struggling. They've never been around a home that functions in the right way, and so they're doing the best they can. So keep at it. Let me give you these 4 words. The first one is Pathfinder. Be a Pathfinder. Proverbs 2, verse number 1. And Solomon is speaking to his son here. In fact, my son, it's like he's trying to get his attention. My son, and he begins to give information, teaching, training. And he says that little phrase, my son, 23 times in this book, again and again. Listen to me. Listen, my son, let me get your attention. My son, look in my eyes. My son, hear my voice. My son, listen to the commandments that I'm giving you. My son, listen to your mother. So 23 times he's making this very personal connection here. And so in verse number 1, it says, my son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as hid treasures, then. He gives us great if then. If you do this, if you seek, if you cry, if you lift up your voice, if you go after it, if you go after the Lord, if you go after wisdom, if it's a passion, if it's intentional, if you're intense about it. He said, if you do that, then, verse number 5, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment, equity, yea, every good path. He said, if you do this, then you're going to know these things. If you do this, you're going to see every good path. And so I think Solomon is speaking out of a voice of experience here. He said, I've found every good path. I've done these things. I've been intentional. I've been passioned person seeking God. And we know the disappointments and the failures that Solomon has, but he also one of the wisest men in the world. And so he said, I found the path. He was a pathfinder. Back in World War II, there was a volunteer group of men, soldiers, that would go out in front. They were dropped in ahead of the main force. They were to scout out landing zones. They were to find the right place to fly in a glider, or a place where they would drop and parachute in men, go in on a dinghy and secure a beach and make sure that beach was the place they needed to bring in maybe tanks or whatever. And so they were operating on a thin thread. They didn't have hardly any backup. Dropped in ahead of time. They were to locate, identify. When they found these landing zones or places, drop zones, they were then to secure them against the enemy. And that may involve some heated conflict, some cost of life, sweat, blood, time, energy. And so they would locate, identify what would work, secure it, and then they were to show the way for others to follow. And so they were to maybe use lights or smoke, however it was done, to show them this is the place. And so in the same way, Dad, you are to be a pathfinder. You are to find every good path. You are to locate it. And some of it we have done, unfortunately, by trial and error. We should have gone to the book. We should have went to God's Word. And so we find it in God's Word, where God gives us children at a very unusual time, most of us. He gives it to us when we're young in life. When I was young, I was in Bible college. I quit. I got away from God, got married, started to have children. And so when I began to have children, I was not serving the Lord. I was not in my Bible, made a lot of mistakes. I was following money. And I got right with God. And so I began to come back to the path. I began to find what I needed to find. And didn't always do the best job, made my share of mistakes. But I found those paths. I found that drop zone. I secured it. And that's what we need to, every one of us as a dad, we need to secure, stand there, make sure we own it, make sure we're keeping it clear for people to follow us into it. Make it very obvious where the drop zone is. In the same way that they would use lights or smoke, we are to identify for those coming behind us that this is what we believe, this is where we stand, this is what is important, this is what is not important, this is what we would be willing to die for, this is a strong conviction, this is a principle of God, a commandment given from the Lord. And so we are to light the way as a pathfinder. It's all about leadership here. You're leading, you're not pushing, you're not driving, you're an example. I've found this, look how this works in my life. And so all this is going on. And unfortunately, many times we send a mixed message. We have one foot in the world. We have one foot where God wants us to be. In the same way on D-Day, there was difficulty with the Pathfinders, some of them not able to show exactly where they need to be. The light didn't work well enough, or the smoke was blown away. So we don't need to send a mixed message. We need to send a very clear, very strong, a very steady, ongoing message that this is where we're going. You can follow if you want. And so I'm encouraging you, Dad, to take the leadership. I get it that Mom maybe is a big hand in this also. She ought to be. But you're setting the pace. You are working together as a team, and you both know what you're doing. And so there's no doubt in the kid's mind who is at the top of the food chain. The kids are not. And so I encourage you, any mom listening to this message, not only is he to lead, allow him to lead. Look, I pastor a church. I've been a pastor for over 20 years now, I guess it is. And every church that I've pastored, this has to happen. I'm to lead. I want to lead. But the people that are following have to allow me to lead. There's a mutual submission that takes place, but they submit under the authority of the pastor. Same thing happens in a home, is that I think sometimes some women are maybe more equipped spiritually to lead. They have the background, but you've got to help your husband, allow him to lead, encourage him in the leadership there, and let him be the pathfinder. And he's going to mess up, but don't we all? And so encourage him in that role. Leadership. Turn the light on and leave it on. The second word is protector. If you would turn to 1 Samuel chapter 30, probably one of my favorite stories. I preached from this passage not too many weeks ago. David at Ziklag, and David has been anointed to be king, but Saul's still the king. And Saul will lose his life and his son's lives here in the next chapter. But in chapter 30, 1 Samuel, verse number 3, it says, David is coming back to the city of Ziklag. So it says, so David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Terrible time. Responsibility was pointed back at David. Matter of fact, his men, it says they wept till they could weep no more. David with them. And they were ready to kill David because they felt like he had led them into this terrible situation. David, though, encourages himself in God, and he is still there. That is still in his nature. He was a protector of the sheep. He's a protector of his family. And so he speaks to God about this in verse 8. It says, and David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered, talking about God, answered him, pursue, go after, fight for what's yours. He said, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. You're going to get it all back. And so there is a responsibility that you have, sir, dad, husband, that you cannot transfer to anyone else. And I get that we have other people that protect us. That's a great thing, isn't it? That other people help. But this responsibility is on your head. You check the locks at night. You keep your children safe. You protect your wife. And so you're not going to farm that out to the guy down the street. He doesn't love your kids like you do. And so I think maybe to protect people physically is the most innate thing. It's just something in us as a man, should be, I think. It's maybe in some senses of the word, the easiest thing to do first, to protect them physically. We get watching someone crowd our children, we stepping into their space. Somebody gets around my grandkids. My sons would, move in, but if they were not there, I would protect my grandchildren. I would with my life. And so we think I'm willing to do that. But there's something that's different than that. This protection is another level of this, is are you protecting their soul? And sometimes we let that go. We let that slide. We're not so concerned about their soul. You can't see the damage done there, at least immediately. But you've got to protect their soul. You got to keep them from harm there. There are people that would harm the soul of your children, damage their minds, their hearts. And so you're protecting them from this world. And so I get it. Some of our parents tell us about how they're laughed at by other family members. They're mocked by the people they work with. That they're too protective. They're too they're too much of a bubble. And I don't know. I don't know where you draw the line sometimes, but I think unfortunately some people have no bubble, no line, no fence, no gate, no wall, no everything washes in and washes out, and everything is allowed to touch a young person's mind. Any thought, any show, any music, any article, any book, any media device, any person, anywhere in the world is allowed to crowd into your child's life without any kind of pushback from dad. And I just thinking about this, I think about how tragic it is that so many parents allow their kids this unfettered access to the world through devices without any kind of filter, any kind of they're allowed to be alone with it, and that is a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous thing. And so let me encourage you to put up some barriers, protect their minds, protect their hearts. Be a pathfinder, yes. Lead them to the truth, and get them to a place where you can keep them safe. And it may involve some things where you take some heat from people, and they don't have to answer for it. You do. Let me give you the third thing: protect a provider. Turn back to Proverbs, if you would. Proverbs 13 and verse number 22. And it says here, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. And so there is this thought you're going to leave something behind. You're going to take care of them. It talks about in 1 Timothy 5:8 about how if a man doesn't provide for his own, that he's worse than an infidel. There's something wrong with that man. And so I think most men say, look, I bring the bread in. There's food on the table, the roof over their heads, there's clothes on their back. And you can't stop there, though. And I've heard this in family squabbles where there's maybe a conflict between husband and wife. The guy just doesn't get it. He's not listening to what's going on around him. And he'll say, look, I've provided for you. Great, you ought to. But there's more to it than that. Provision is not just a substance. It's not just a thing you can put your hand on. There are other things you ought to provide. Your presence, for one. A lot of men overwork themselves. They're punching in for every hour on the clock, and unfortunately, there's some men that won't work at all, which is both extremes of this. Can't turn down overtime. Takes every extra day. Then the guy that don't work at all. There's got to be somewhere that is a middle, moderate place to be, because your children need you to be there. You cannot be absent in body all the time and there not be some sort of deficit there. They need you to encourage them. You need to be there to lift them up. You need to be there to listen to them. So you're providing a listening ear. You're inviting a voice of encouragement. You're praising the right things in their life. You're correcting the things that need to be changed. And so you're teaching, you're training, you're bringing them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. You cannot do that by a phone call. You can't, it is so, and I feel for people that are in that situation. I do. But if you're living in the same house as your children, you've got to be there. And so be a provider, teach and train. There's so many opportunities, things around the table, things that happen in the house, teaching children to work with tools. I see this with boys. A friend of mine wrote a book, and it's kind of geared for single women raising boys. And we've talked quite a bit about this. There is something that takes place in a young man's life when he is confident in the skills that his dad's taught him. He can confidently use, at least in some measure, the things that work on his car. He can change a tire. He can put on a wiper blade. He can fill the fluids. He could use a screwdriver. He can nail a nail with a hammer. He could saw a board. Those basic skills. Some young guys don't have it, and there is an absence, not of that, just of that skill, but there's a level of confidence that is absent in their life. And I'm telling you, it affects every area, not just their confidence with women. Being around a young lady is absent. So we're seeing a generation of young men that are not acting normally, I'm afraid, around young women. And so be a provider, be there. Provide food, clothes, yes, you ought to do that. If you're in a divorce situation, you ought to take care of your children. You ought to. The court shouldn't have to push you and beg you to do those kind of things. But be a provider, be a protector, be a pathfinder. And then this last thing, I hope you like this from Romans 13. We are to render tribute to tribute, custom to custom, honor to whom honor. So the thought is there, honor to whom honor is due. And so the last thought is that not only should you be a pathfinder, protector, or provider, be a prince. Be a prince. I heard a story, watched a little snippet of something. It's a Jewish, they were recording Yiddish conversation that had to do with that language. And the lady that was being interviewed, she said that after World War II, her husband was in the military and they were stationed in Europe. And she got a telegram from her mother that dad had died. She said, of course, I'm going to go home. My mom was alone. My mom had to deal with selling a business by herself. And so she gets home back, maybe I think New York City. And she's making calls around to people that were vendors and suppliers and things, people trying to trying to get the employees the jobs. And so she called and spoke. She's speaking with a lady on the phone, said, well, my father's passed away. The business is going to be sold. And the phone call got very quiet. And before she knew it, the lady, the daughter says that the lady in the line is crying. She said, why are you crying? She said this. She said, I never met your father personally, but we were on the phone often, very often, dealing with the business. And she said, I just want you to know your dad was a prince of a man, a prince of a man. And I think she just took it, it just really touched her that someone would think that of her dad. And we ought to think that of our dads. We ought to think of that of the people that have influenced us. And some of you have dads that are not your biological dad. You have a dad, a stepdad. You have a dad that has stepped in. Maybe he's not legally. Maybe it's a guy at church that was influenced, your pastor, your youth pastor, somebody that took you under the wing and taught you, trained you, mentored you. And so you have an affection for that person that spent that time with you, helped you in life. Maybe you didn't have a dad, but here's a guy for daughters that was there that helped you through hard times, helped kind of screen the guys that were going to come to your door. And so you ought to think of him with respect and honor this fella for what he is. This is his day. We on Mother's Day treat your mom like a queen, and then we think also of dad. Treat him like a prince. Treat him like a king, and honor him for what he's done. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. We've all made mistakes. There are things I would like to go back and fix. When I was having kids, I was young, stupid, didn't know much. I was foolish. I was impatient. I wasn't spiritual. I was immature. I wanted things for myself. I got mad too quickly, too easily. But we're trying. We're trying. I had a patient wife. My kids are good kids. They're patient with me. And so honor these guys in your life if they're still here, and make much of them today. So guys, do your job. Do your job. And I know what you have sown, you will reap. And may God give you a great harvest in the lives of your children and your children's children. God bless you on this day. Hope you have a fine day.